the major difference between like the CMD and the entry point. So CMD command, as I mentioned, like, so this is the command which is actually used for specifying like anything like so which you wanted to execute on the container startup. Okay. The same is the case with entry point, but there are like some differences between the CMD and the entry point. First, let's see like what the CMD command is actually. So here, like what I'm actually doing is like, so this is my previous example. So I just took like this Ubuntu with Nano, like, so this is the basic Ubuntu image with Nano and all that stuff. Okay. On top of it, like I'm just installing like apt get update, like all this Ubuntu updates. And finally, like I'm installing Nginx with -y option. Okay. So after that, like what I'm actually doing. So I wanted to execute like multiple steps. Like, so I wanted to do something like I wanted to start this particular container, like in the next container, in the next service inside this Ubuntu machine. And also at the same time, like I wanted to write the output, like I wanted to write the output of this particular service, like in the next service to the external world, like stdin kind of thing. Okay. So okay, so Deep Kiran like was asking me, like he's asking me like, what is this? How do we execute like multiple commands like using this CMD? Like with CMD, like you'll be able to execute only one specific command. Okay, so you can provide like only one option. Like so, in order with this CMD or the entry point. Okay, but if you want to group like multiple commands, so for example, like I wanted to start this Nginx service, and at the same time, like after that, like I wanted to execute this tail minus f. Like this is again like another Ubuntu command which outputs the std output to the console. Okay, so I want to execute these two commands. So here, what I'm actually doing is like, so I'm just putting like I just created a shell script. So this is a basic shell script which consists of two different commands. Okay. So what I'm actually doing, so in my Docker file, I'm copying this startup.sh file into the Docker image. So this is the copy command like which I'm using. Like I'm copying the startup.sh file into the Docker image. So once I'm just copying this command, like I'm just specifying this working directory as a dot. So it is the root directory. Like so even this is not actually required basically. So yeah, and then what I'm actually trying to do is like, so I'm trying to expose this 80 port. So if you want to expose this 80, so why am I exposing this 80 port is, so I'm trying to install Nginx software, right? So Nginx by default, it runs on 80 port. So if you want to change this default port to some other port number, so you need to make some configuration related changes related to this Nginx. And what you can actually do is like, so you can also copy that particular config file to this image. Okay, so you can copy the configuration file to the location on this particular image, like wherever this Nginx config file is present. So you can just copy the config file, like our version of the config file into that specific location. But right now, like I'm not interested in changing that config file. So that is the reason why like I'm exposing this port 80. Okay. So now let's see this command, like the CMD command. So after that, like my intention is to execute this shell script. Okay. Simply what I can actually do is like I can actually start this service. So before actually doing that, I'll show you. So my intention is to start the service, like, okay, in the next service, right? So what I can simply do is, so I can actually do something like this service. So these are nothing but like each of these items, so they denote like a space kind of thing. Okay, service and the next, and then start. So I want to start this service in the next service. Okay. So let me create an image from this particular Docker file. So you're following, right? My intention. So I wanted to start this Nginx. So taking an Ubuntu image, like I want to install Nginx on that Ubuntu image, and then so simply like I can actually use this particular instead of taking this as a base image, I can simply take an Nginx image like which we have in the Docker Hub. But my intention here is to take a basic Ubuntu image and then install Nginx on top of it and start the service. OK, so this is the command like which I'll be using. Like, so I wanted to install Nginx, and then so even this is not required. Let's copy this and then expose port 80. And here like I'm starting like service Nginx start. OK. So this is again like an Ubuntu command to start Nginx. Yeah, so I don't have like any junk images, so I'll go and create images. So the command is docker build -t tag Pavan Arya / Nginx. Okay, and then so I need to specify dot. Okay, so do I miss anything? No. So the image got created, and you can see like most of the steps are actually cached. Backup images. So Nginx from Ubuntu. Now I'll start this particular content. Docker 1 -50. And this is the image like it, which I wanted to, and then I want to expose the port to a random one. Okay, so you can actually see it is actually displaying this message starting Nginx. Okay, so it is starting this Nginx service. Now, ideally, like let me see Docker PS. Okay, but if you see this particular image, like so Pavan Arya Nginx from Ubuntu, you'll not be able to see that. Okay, so are you able to see that image? So this is the one, not this is not the one, not the one. So you're not able to see this, like so it started and then it got killed immediately. So you can see like so this image it started. So which command it got executed? Service Nginx start. And how did we get that in command? Like so this is the command like which got executed on startup. Okay, and then it got executed for 42 seconds and then it got exited. Okay, so what happened in this case is so this particular Nginx it got installed and I got the image. And when I started this container, so it executed this command like service Nginx start. So this command like this gets executed in the background. Like so this is like starting a service like okay. So you're saying like Nginx to start. Okay. After that, what is happening? So there is no other work like it doesn't have like any other work unlike like the Node.js server. So it is not actually stopping in the background like so this command got executed, the service got Nginx service got started, and then the container is idle, like it doesn't have anything to do. It has nothing to do. So what happened? Like the container it got killed. Okay, so this is the thing. So we saw a similar kind of problem when we started on the first day of our session, like when we started like Ubuntu. We had like a similar kind of issue, if you remember, like so whatever the message like which I am providing. So for example, Docker run Ubuntu, and then so if I do this Docker run Ubuntu, so this is the image, right? So nothing happened here. But if you see Docker ps -a, you can see this Ubuntu container, it got started and then the bash, it got executed. This is the command which got executed and it took like almost like 6 seconds and then it got killed immediately. Okay, so this is the problem like which we saw. Also, so in order to print a message, like I can actually do echo. Okay, So in this case, like what happened? So it ran this particular Ubuntu image, and then I provided this override. I provided this particular command. Like, so if you see docker ps, again, like you'll not see this Ubuntu container. Let's execute like docker ps minus here. Okay, so when I execute this, so now you can actually see previously, like when I didn't actually specify any command, it executed bash. So now I provided like echo. Okay, so the command which I executed is docker run ubuntu echo pavan. Okay, so now it took this echo pavan as the command. Okay, so it took this command and then it executed, it printed the message pavan here. You can see at the top, and then it got killed immediately. So this is the same problem which we are facing with our Nginx server, like the latest Nginx image, like which we built. Is that the case or not?
Yes, Tom.
So that is the same problem like which we are seeing with Ubuntu. Let me execute a small command. Like so, once when I execute this command, like again, let's see docker ps minus a. What happened? It started, it executed the service Nginx start, and then it got exited. Okay. So here, let me print something like echo. Okay. So if you see again, like it executed this command like echo command and then it killed. So let's see docker ps minus a. You can actually see again. So this time the command which got executed is echo p. So even though the command in our docker file, I specified this service Nginx start as my cmd command that needs to be executed at the start. Once I gave this command, like at the end, it got overwritten and it took like this echo pavan as the starting command. Okay, you're following this, right? Yes. Or any questions over here? Like, so you can see like so even though like I gave this command like as in the startup, once I provided this particular option, okay, so to execute like at the end, like when I provided this option like echo pavan, so it got overwritten. So previously the command was like service Nginx start, but now it got changed to the one which I provided. Okay, so this is the difference. Same way, like I can actually provide like anything like /bin/bash. Okay, so now the container, so it is actually, it got into the container. And if you see ps minus here, okay, so you can see now the command got changed to bin bash. Okay, so that is the thing with like command. So
I had a doubt.
yeah.
So I mean, if we don't provide any additional commands after our normal build command, so basically it should, I mean, it should be running, right? Because we have exposed the port as well, and we have used the capital P flag as well. So does it depend on the Nginx command which we are passing in the CMD?
So actually, like when you specify this expose 80, so this doesn't mean that like you're actually running the service in the background, like, okay. So the instruction expose 80 is nothing but like, so you are saying like this particular image is capable of exposing 80, okay. And whenever like you provide -p, capital P, okay. Yeah. So it is actually trying to assign a random port, okay. Yes. So based on this Docker file, but here like the service got started, like it got started, but what is happening is it is getting killed immediately. I mean, this Nginx service is not getting killed, so it is running in the background. Okay, so it is something like you got into your Windows machine and then you started the Windows scheduler, task scheduler, and then you started a service. Okay, so after that, like your machine is idle, so it does the job in the background, right? Okay. So it is not actually waiting for something. Okay. So that is the thing.
I mean, if we'll remove this command cmd from our Docker file and normally run the command which we were running to start the container, then it would work, right? I mean, it should.
So even in that case, like what happens is, so service nginx start, it is a background command. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're just instructing your Ubuntu machine to start the nginx service. Okay. After that, like immediately it gets killed. So it is not actually stopping, like your process is not actually waiting for something. So it has done its job. So what's the instruction you gave? Like you gave the instructions to start the nginx. Okay. After that, like you didn't say nginx, you didn't say that like, so wait until wait for something or wait something to happen or something like that. Okay. So in order to solve this, I'll go with like another approach. Okay. Instead of CMD, let me try entry point. So I'll rebuild this image. So the same command I can actually give docker build. So it will just rebuild the image. Now docker run. Just docker run. So I want to run this particular image. Okay. So you can actually see starting nginx, and then done. Okay. Now let's see docker ps. So now you can actually see that this is not running. It got killed. Now let's execute docker ps -a. So you can see this is the same command like service nginx start, and then it got exited after that. Like, so you don't see any difference between this thing and this thing. Like, okay. So even though like I provided entry point, this is getting executed, even though with CMD, this is getting executed, the same command is getting executed. So in this case, both the command CMD and then entry point are behaving in the same way. Now let me do something. Docker run. And then now I wanted to, what I wanted to do is like, so I want to keep this container open. Okay. So waiting for something. So one way to do that is like, so to start like bin bash. For example, like, or else let's wait. I'll just give like echo. So we'll see this example also. So previously, like when I gave CMD, what happened? So instead of entry point, when I gave the CMD, so instead of this particular command like service nginx start, this echo Pavan, it got executed, right? So now if you see, still like it is actually starting nginx only. Okay. So previously, like when I executed this command, so I used to get like this command like echo, all that stuff. Okay. Now let's see docker ps -a. And you can see like even though I gave this echo power, so it's still executing this nginx start. Okay. So does anyone remember this full command to see the complete text of a command, complete text? So we saw that sometime back.
Hyphen no trunk.
No trunk, right? A hyphen. No, here you can see. So now if you see, it is service nginx start echo Pavan. So what is happening? The command like which I gave, like when I'm starting this container, like Pavan nginx Ubuntu container. Okay. So instead of like, so I gave this command, right? So echo Pavan. So what you can see now, so it is actually getting appended to this entry point as an option, okay, as an extra parameter kind of thing. So that is how like it behaves. Like in the case of entry point, any additional commands, like any additional commands like which you give at the time of run, so they get appended to the existing command. Okay, so you see the difference, right? So, but in case of like CMD, like whenever like I have CMD over here instead of entry point, so this is how like it behaved. Like the command that got executed is echo Pavan. So here the command is getting overwritten. But here in this case, so the command is getting appended to the entry point command. So did you see this difference?
Yes.
So that is with the entry point. Okay. So now again, coming back to our question, like, so in all these cases, like, so when I'm starting this container, so the service is getting started and immediately it is getting killed. Okay. Now let me do a small Docker run -it -bin/bash. In this case, what is happening? So when I give like bin bash, so ideally, like, what is happening behind the scenes? So what is this bin bash actually doing here? Can anyone answer this?
Starting the container in interactive mode.
Yeah, so it is actually starting the container in the interactive mode. So that this is giving an instruction like don't kill the container. So once you are done with the job, don't kill the container. So we want to interact with this container in the bin bash mode. Okay, so that is what, like, so it doesn't actually kill, right? Whenever we give like bin bash. So now you can actually see. So this is the command which got executed. Bin now if you see, so what happened? Like, so the command it got appended. Like, so to the entry point itself, like this got appended. Okay, all the command like which we provided, it got appended, and also you can see this got killed. Okay, so this is behaving differently, right? So that is the reason why, like, whenever like we are providing this entry point, so somehow like I wanted to make my this thing, like, so my command, like my service is to stop in the background. Okay, so let me try another option. So no difference there. So it started and then it got in. Okay. So this is the main difference, like between the entry point and then the service, like, okay, command, like. So you're clear with this entry point and then the command difference, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So now what I wanted to do is like, so I want to run this particular container. So I want to stop this container in the background somehow. So that is my intention. So that is the reason why, like, what I'm actually doing this. So I created a startup.sh file. Okay. Since I can actually only provide like only one option, like, so one command I can execute with entry point or CMD option. So I'm just trying to provide, like, create a shell script over here. And then what I'm actually doing, so I'm giving this service engineering start and then tail -f. So this is to start, like, so this is just, this will actually stop it from getting killed. Okay. So usually like tail -f, what it does is like, so in Ubuntu, so it waits for the output. So basically like it is waiting for the standard output. Okay. So if you don't again provide like this -f option, so it gets killed. Okay. So it prints any log and after that, like, it gets killed. But -f option, so it makes it to wait. Okay. Now let me run this command. So let me change this Docker file. So I want to execute this S6. I'm rebuilding the news. Now I'll do Docker run. Okay, so you can actually see, so my cursor, like, it is waiting. So now it is waiting for the standard output. And if in the new tab, like if I open like Docker PS, okay, so this port, it got opened. Like, I'm not actually exposing this port to the outside world, right? I'll just do that. Okay, so you can actually see now this is not getting killed. So this is running in the background. And that is because this tail minus F, so it is actually waiting. I want to expose this to a random port minus P. Okay. So now if I do like Docker PS, so you can see this is the port, like it is Nginx is getting exposed on this port. So now you can actually see, and then if you see these logs, okay. Ideally, it should actually print the logs, but it is not actually printing. I'll get back to you on this, like, why it is not printing the logs. But hope it is clear, right? So somehow, like I want this after this process, like I want the container to be still doing something like. So that is why, like I'm using this -f command. So this will actually keep this thing, like okay, keep the container alive. Okay, and if you see the command. Again. So you can see like this is the command like which is getting executed sh startup.sh. Okay. So in all the examples like which you provided me, like this is the command like which you use, right? Cmd npm start. Okay. So when you're actually starting this container, so if I provide like any other option like bin bash or something like that, so what happens? Can you just let me know?
It will only execute the bin bash command.
Yeah, so it will not actually start the npm server. Okay, it will not do npm start. Okay, so it will take you inside the container, but your expectation is something like this. So you expect this npm to get started in the background, but that is not happening. So it is actually executing the bin bash command. So it is the bin bash command like which you provided. So it is overriding this npm start. Okay. Yeah. So any questions related to this command and then entry point?
So can we provide the similar commands like the npm commands which we actually include in this script? So can we provide these commands in the sh file script?
Yeah. So shell is nothing but like if you see, so all these commands like npm install app, this is not the one, like npm install and npm start. So usually like shell script is nothing but like it's a series of like all these Unix commands, like Unix and then Unix and then Linux commands. Okay. So you're actually grouping multiple commands into a shell script like sh file, and then you're actually executing that. Yeah, so that is quite possible.
It's similar to a batch file, right?
Yeah, similar to a BAT file. In Windows World, like we have this BAT file, right? So the same thing. So it actually does. Okay. So it can be like a batch file or a PowerShell script. Like you can also create PowerShell scripts like the same way. Okay. Yeah. So these are the some of the options like related to, so I think like now you got some idea on this thing, like so what is actually happening with these Docker images and then the layers, at least like what is happening behind the scenes and all that stuff. So another interesting thing, like so this morning like Karthik actually shared with me is so whenever we do like multiple commands, like I mean, so let's say like I'm actually copying like 100 MB file somewhere here, like okay, in the first step, and here like in the fifth step, I'm just removing that particular 100 MB file. Okay, but still like the memory that is allocated to this 100 MB file, it is still intact. Like it is still taking this 100 MB image itself. Like, okay. So there's to avoid this, like, so we have something called as like multi-stage builds. Okay, so multi-stage builds are nothing but like, so you can actually create an image initially, and then from this image, like you can actually create another image kind of thing. Okay, I'll just show you an example. Like, what I'll try to do is, so I'll create like a basic .NET command. So I'll take a new project. So multi-stage builds are nothing but like initially, like what I'm actually, so usually like most of us are familiar with these technologies, like, so or .NET, Java, or even Node to some extent. Okay. So what we actually do, we have this source code. Like, so in my source code, like I have all the files, like, so these files, controller files, and all this stuff. Like, but end of the day, like once I build this particular code, so what is the output that I get? Like, so I get all these DLLs. So that is the final package which we create. The same is the case with like Angular and then React. Like, so in React, like you'll have all the bulky code, and then finally like we do npm install, and then we do like a ng build, right? So in Angular case, so once we do ng build, what's the output that we get? Like, so we get like a packaged kind of thing. So we get like a minimal folder, minimal code, which is actually, so the final output, like it's the packaged code or something like, it's the final published code or something like that, right? So if you see the size comparison, okay, so your source code and then the packages, so npm packages, npm installs, so it is very bulky. So all the dev dependencies. So for example, like if you take any dev dependencies, so they're actually executed at the time of npm install. But finally, like when we are actually doing an ng build or something like that, so it actually does a chain kind of thing, and then see like which are all the packages not being used, and then it tries to eliminate that all those packages. Prithvi, you can add more words, like, so how this actually works, like ng build. Prithvi or anyone, like, so from the UI background.
Yes, basically, I mean, when we build the project, then I mean, for production build, we actually download the dependencies and not the dev dependencies.
Dev dependencies. Yeah.
So you're asking for the background process of
No, so that is what happens, right? So I mean, maybe like I'm just creating some confusion in explaining that. So maybe I thought like you'll be better to explain that. So usually what happens, like, yeah.
The build process, right?
Yeah, so yeah, I think like Deep already gave the insight. That should be fine. So with the production build, what it does is like, so it will not actually install any dev dependencies, and it will only download all those dependencies. Like I think like there is something called as npm chain or something, right? So it only takes only the packages that are being used in the code, all those unnecessary packages. So it tries to eliminate them. And fine.
Yeah.
Huh?
npm prune.
Yeah, npm prune or something like that. I don't exactly remember the commands. So, but the final intention is something like this. When we do ng build production, so the final output size is very less when compared to the source code which we have, and then all those dev dependencies that got downloaded, right? So the same thing, the same is the case with like .NET Core. So you might be having like n number of these controllers, and then you might be having like n number of projects. Like, so there are projects, there are certain projects which have almost like 20, 30 projects, like project dependencies. So, but end of the day, like when we do the publish, like when we do the final build, so we get like only the packages, the package contains only the DLL. So it doesn't actually contain all these CS files and then all the additional stuff. Like it removes all those comments and all that stuff, right? So that is the thing. So initially, so what we do, so in order to publish, so what we do, so we actually build this particular code, source code, and once we build this source code, there is something called as publish. Okay, so we publish is nothing but like we'll just take only the DLs that are required to run the software. So this is clear, right?
Yeah.
Now let's see this example. Okay. So this is a simple .NET image. So in this .NET container, like so it is actually having a small controller. So this is just an API, backend API, and it is exposing like a basic method. Like so, it is written in some dummy data. So that is the main functionality behind this. So I wanted to build this container. So this is a .NET Core project. So if I want to, on my local environment, like I have all the fancy Visual Studio and then all those .NET frameworks installed. So which obviously takes like 5 GB of my space, like C disk space. But ideally, like we can't afford that much of space, right? So on this Docker image or Docker container. Okay, so we wanted to have only the final output that is getting copied into the Docker container. Okay. So in order to do that, like what we can actually do, so I need to build this code. Once this is actually built, so I want to publish only the final DLLs. Okay, so only the final DLLs which are required for deploying this application. So I wanted them. So in order to do that, like so what I wanted to do, so initially I want to copy the content, the source code. So all the source code into the image. Okay. So that is what I'm actually doing. So I'm taking this ASP.NET 5.0 as the base image. You can also label these images something like as base or something like that. Okay. So I'm taking this is the Microsoft image, like which contains ASP.NET 5.0. Okay. So just ignore these things. So you are pretty well aware of this working directory and expose. Okay. So now as a first step, what I'm actually doing, so I'm taking another image. So I'm taking this. So ideally, like what are the steps like which we do? So I wanted to build this image, right? So I'll stop all this. So as an end user, so initially, like my intention is, so I want to take this image as a base image, like SDK 5.0. So this has like the build capability, so it can actually build the code. After that, like what I'm actually doing, so I'm just copying, like I want to copy my code. So I am just copying this particular CS project into this current directory. Okay. So into this SRC directory. Okay. So I have this SRC directory in this container, in this image. So after copying, so what I'm doing, like I'm doing like .NET Restore. So this is almost similar to npm install. So we have like package.json in .NET. So yeah, so here, like, so you also see this. So here itself, like they're actually referring all these images. So instead of going for the package rotation, so .NET Restore, what it is actually doing is, so it is just like npm install kind of thing. Okay, so it is taking like these references from this part, these references that are provided. Like so, these are the two references, like ASP.NET Azure, so and so, and then /.il ASP.NET Core. These are the two packages which I wanted to install. Okay, so I gave this as an input, like .NET Restore. After that, like again, what it is actually doing, it is copying the current directory, all the code which is present in my host machine. Like, so this is my host machine, right? So it is copying the entire code onto this directory, okay, into the SRC directory. Now I'm going into this SRC directory. I'm setting this SRC directory as the base one. So we can also do some. So I'm just making this SRC directory as the base directory. So after that, just like ng build, so I'm doing like .NET build. So this will build the code. And then the final output is actually sent to. So this is the flag to specify the output folder name. This is the output folder, like app build. Okay. Let's execute this command. Let's see this. Let's execute this and then see. Oh, this is all my code, right? So I'm just executing this. Build. So this is my image. Docker build -t. So you can actually see it is creating this working directory, and then .NET Restore is nothing but like installing all those packages. And finally, like it executed this .NET build. So the same command, it is almost similar to ngbuild. Okay. Now let's get inside this container. -it, and then there's a container. /bash. I want to observe the folder structure inside this. Okay. So since I have this src as the working directory, so when I did like bin bash, so it went directly into this src directory. Okay. Let's see ls. So you can actually see all these controllers, properties, forecast.cs, all my code. Like so, this code it got copied entirely. Controllers, properties, and then web application 1, and all these folders they got copied. You can see like there are certain folders like which are not actually copied. So they are actually provided in the Docker ignore. So it is saying like these files, these anything that matches these things, like so they can be ignored. Okay. So Docker ignore is pretty useful when you want to ignore like any specific file formats or any files from copying into the container. Okay, into the image.
It's like git ignore.
Yeah, it's like git ignore. So you can actually see all this they got copied, and then what happened. So after copying, what is the command like which we get? So we executed this .NET build, and then there is a folder called as in the release mode, and then this is the folder like into which like we copied. Okay, so where is this app? See, where exactly are we copying? Are we copying it to app build? CD. So you can see my application means web application 1. These are the DLLs, like these are the output DLLs that got generated. So now you can see this, right? So these are the output DLLs which got generated. Okay. Any questions till now?
So Pavan, I do have one quick question. So here you're doing like the process still copy command. You are cloned as a alias image. So then after that, is there any real-time scenario where we can do the same? Like, what is the use of this? Like, does it help in reducing the size?
Yeah. So it obviously it has some benefit. So till this point, like yeah, I'll cover this shortly. Okay. So till this point, like it is pretty clear. Like I'm just taking this .NET SDK. So SDK has like all the build capabilities. Okay. So .NET has like multiple repos, like I mean multiple images. So it has like ASP.NET 5.0 image. So which doesn't have like the build capabilities, but it has the capabilities to run the code. Okay. So whereas like SDK 5.0, so it is used for build. Okay. So in this case, so what I'm actually doing, so I'm just taking all this content. Okay. And then so I'm building. So I'm just restoring these packages, and then finally I'm doing a build. Okay. So now once this is actually built, so do I have any uses with these files? Okay, so I don't have any use with these files, right? So ideally, like in production environment, like we don't want to copy the entire code and then debug it in the servers, right? So we want to have only the compiled code, and this is the compiled code. Let's see some of these image sizes. So if you see, so this image, so it is occupying almost 660 MB size. Okay. Now let me do one thing. So on top of it, like if I want to install anything, like so let's browse this thing. Actually exposing, like it is not actually starting, so I'm just doing the build. So okay, so sorry, so this is a different image. Okay. The image name which I gave is like Pavan to delete. Just ignore this. So usually like with Visual Studio, what happens is, so whenever like you download this thing and then build this application, so the Docker container, it gets executed. Like in the build process itself, like Visual Studio started, and so it will build the container. Okay, so till now, like what we saw, so we actually took this particular image, like a build image, and then so we tried to build our code. Like okay, so we tried to build our code, and then finally the final package code. So it is actually copied to this particular directory app and then build. Okay, so now if I want to run this particular ASP.NET application to start this ASP.NET application, so I need like another package. Like okay, so. So these are the different images with .NET provided images. So .NET SDK. So this is actually used for building these images. Okay. So I'm just trying to start this Docker, I mean the .NET application. So I rebuild this one. I will So you can actually see expose this port to our server. So it got started, like the server got started. this. So I started this thing. In this image, so it is getting exposed on this port. So here, like if you see the application, it got started on 5000 port. What's the mistake like which we did? So here, like if you see, it is exposing this thing. 80 port and then 443 port. These are the default ports which are getting exposed. Oh, that is not the. We provide this minus expose option like over here, like if you see. So here, like I'm not providing any expose option, right? And when I did like minus P, so none of the ports they got exposed. This is actually a bit confusing. So if you see, so this is actually not exposing. So even though like I gave minus P option, okay. So there is no port in the expose. So yesterday, like in the assignment, I was asking you this question. So what happens like if you don't give an expose in the Docker file, okay? And then if you use like minus P option, so it doesn't actually expose any port. Okay. So in order to avoid that, what I should actually do? I need to manually specify the port. Minus P, and I want to export like 5000 port over there to 5000 port here. It's because like we saw our application, it is actually running in this 5000 port. So 5000 port on the container to the host machine 5000 port. And then this is the image. Let's execute this. So still not exposed. Please stop this current here. So my intention is something like this. So I wanted to build this port using this SDK 5.0. This is like a full .NET version. I mean, so it is actually for the development users and all that. Okay. So there I wanted to run my .NET application. Okay. So, but it is not actually taken. I will just go. So I go inside this content and see what is happening. So in order to debug that, what I do is I remove this entry point, so which will not actually start the server, and then I get inside the container and manually see what is happening.
Yeah, why can't we go and check Docker inspect? So it is saying 5000 is not binded, right?
Yeah, I'll do that. So this is the directory. Wanted to use DL. Idea on how to run this Ubuntu commands in the background, apart from Amazon.
No, only percent only I used to. Let me expose this 5000 report. Let's see. Anna, I shared one comment, Anna. Try to check in that container in order to check 5000 port is listening or not.
Ubuntu command.
In Ubuntu, Anna. In this chart, I shared the command.
Mm. Let's do one thing, like I don't want to waste your time. So I'll look into this and then we can continue tomorrow. Like, okay. So tomorrow, like I'll actually go with, I will explain like what is this multi-stage build and then how this is actually useful. Okay.
Anna, hello.
Yeah. So apart from this multi-stage build, like any other questions?
No, but Karthik is trying to say something.
Yeah. Karthik.
అన్న అప్పుడు నువ్వు చూసావు కదా లైక్ పోస్ట్ డాట్ ఇంటర్నల్ అది కొడితే వస్తుంది అన్న
నేను ఒకసారి చూస్తాను అది అంటే ఏంటి ఎందుకు ఇది ఎక్స్పర్ట్ అంటే మేబీ లైక్ ఈ దీంట్లో అసలు ఉందా లేదా ఏంటి ఒకసారి ఫిక్స్ చేస్తాను.
అంటే లాస్ట్ టైం చేసినప్పుడు పోస్ట్ డాట్ ఇంటర్నల్ అని చెప్పి యూఆర్ఎల్ జనరేట్ అవుతుంది కదా డెస్క్టాప్ లో. సో బయట యాక్సెస్ చేసినప్పుడు కాలన్ నువ్వు ఇచ్చే ఇప్పుడు ఎఫిర్మెల్ పోర్ట్ ఉంది కదా అది ఇస్తే వస్తుందేమో ఒకసారి ఫైనల్ టచ్.
యాక్చువల్గా అంటే నాకు అది కాదు కానీ సో ఐ హ్యావ్ ఎ డౌట్ ఆన్ దిస్ డాక్యుమెంట్. సో బేసికలీ లైక్ సమ్ ఆఫ్ దీస్ ఇమేజెస్ సో దే డోంట్ ఎక్స్పోజ్ టు ద ఎక్స్టర్నల్ లైక్ డాక్యుమెంట్ హ్యాస్ సమ్ I remember something around this, so I'll just dig deeper into this. So there is a small tweak with this.
Okay.
Yeah. So apart from this multi-stage build, like we'll see this tomorrow. Like so, I'll explain it tomorrow. So no other questions, right? Okay. Yeah. Then we'll wrap this session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.